When it comes to understanding how men act around highly attractive women, the first and most obvious thing you notice is the shift in confidence, or more accurately, the sudden lack of it. Confidence is magnetic. It draws people in, commands attention, and communicates a sense of security and self-assuredness. But what's fascinating is how quickly that confidence can crumble in the presence of someone who represents an ideal of attractiveness, charisma, or desirability. It's not just about fear or intimidation. It's about the way a man's mind reacts when faced with someone he perceives as being out of his league. Now, here's the thing: nervousness isn't always obvious at first glance. It doesn't always manifest as stuttering or shyness. Often, it comes out in small, almost imperceptible behaviors, slight changes in posture, sudden fidgeting with a glass or a piece of clothing, or an over-the-top attempt to be witty. These behaviors are unconscious, and they happen because the man's brain is trying to navigate a high-stakes social situation. There's a deep evolutionary aspect to this. In many ways, our brains are wired to respond to potential mates with heightened alertness. The body releases adrenaline, the heart rate increases, and suddenly, the guy who normally speaks with ease or walks into a room with confidence finds himself second, guessing every word he wants to say. This is where it gets interesting, because confidence isn't just about being bold or assertive. It's about presence, about knowing your value, and about understanding that your worth isn't defined by someone else's appearance. Highly attractive women are often the most skilled at recognizing these shifts in energy. They can tell when a man is comfortable in his own skin versus when he's projecting a facade. And this projection, this nervous overcompensation, is often more revealing than a man realizes. It's like a subtle window into his insecurities, and it can be incredibly telling for someone who knows what to look for. When a man is genuinely confident, he doesn't feel the need to overperform. His humor is natural, his compliments are sincere, and his energy is steady. But when nervousness creeps in, there's often a noticeable spike in behaviors that are designed to impress rather than connect. He may lean in too close, laugh too loudly, or tell exaggerated stories about his accomplishments. In his mind, these behaviors are a strategy, a way to compensate for what he perceives as a deficiency. But in reality, they often signal the opposite of confidence. The nervous man is unconsciously broadcasting his uncertainty, which can be as transparent as a window pane. And here's where it circles back to psychology. Nervousness activates a feedback loop. The more a man worries about how he's being perceived, the more self-conscious he becomes, and the more his behavior betrays his anxiety. It's a cycle that many men are completely unaware of because they are focused solely on trying to appear cool or interesting. But confidence isn't about trying harder, it's about being comfortable with who you are, with or without approval from the person across from you. The most magnetic individuals are often those who can exist in the moment, who can engage without overthinking, and who can tolerate the uncertainty inherent in any social interaction. Now, when you observe this dynamic, you start to notice patterns. Some men respond to nervousness by becoming almost hyper-aggressive. They dominate the conversation, interrupt frequently, or attempt to assert status through material achievements. Others retreat into silence, smile awkwardly, or avoid eye contact entirely. Both responses, while opposite in outward behavior, stem from the same root, the tension between authentic confidence and internal insecurity. Understanding this allows you to see beyond the surface level of charm or bravado and recognize the underlying truth of a man's emotional state. One of the most fascinating aspects of this confidence versus nervousness dynamic is how quickly it can flip in real time. A casual comment, a shared laugh, or a subtle sign of mutual interest can instantly restore a man's composure, and he can shift from awkwardness to smooth engagement almost seamlessly. This is a clear reminder that confidence isn't static, it's responsive. It grows or diminishes depending on the environment, the perceived stakes, and the interaction itself. And here's an important nuance. Nervousness itself isn't inherently bad. In many ways, it signals that the interaction matters, that the stakes feel real. But the difference between a man who lets nervousness define his behavior and one who manages it lies in self-awareness. The confident man recognizes his anxiety, acknowledges it internally, and doesn't allow it to sabotage the connection he's trying to build. He might feel the flutter in his chest, the slight hesitation in his speech, or the urge to perform, but he doesn't let it control him. That subtle mastery over internal emotion is what creates a magnetic presence that is noticed instantly by highly attractive women once you start observing how men act around highly attractive women. One of the most striking patterns you notice is overcompensation. Overcompensation is when someone tries too hard to prove their worth, often exaggerating their strengths or masking their insecurities in ways that are obvious to the trained eye. It's an almost universal response, and it reveals a lot about the psychology of attraction and perceived status. In essence, overcompensation happens because the man perceives a gap between who he is and the level of desirability he believes the woman expects. Overcompensation can take many forms, and it often starts subtly. A man may start by boasting slightly more than usual, sharing stories that highlight his achievements, or mentioning expensive possessions as a way of demonstrating his success. It can appear harmless at first, a funny anecdote about a promotion at work, a casual mention of travel experiences, but the underlying motive is always to impress, to bridge the perceived gap between himself and the woman he's interacting with. The key is that it's rarely conscious. Most men don't sit down and plan, "I'm going to exaggerate to impress her." Instead, it's a reaction, a response to the pressure they feel in the moment. You start to notice patterns when you watch closely. The man who overcompensates often talks faster, laughs louder, and tries to dominate the conversation. He may drop impressive, sounding but minor details about his life, hoping she notices, hoping she will validate his worth. Some men exaggerate their sense of humor, making jokes that are louder, more animated, or even slightly over the top. The goal is the same, to create a perception of value that they feel they lack naturally. The irony, of course, is that this often backfires because the overcompensation signals insecurity more than confidence. It's fascinating because overcompensation isn't always about what the man says, it's also about what he does physically. He may lean in too much to appear engaged, or he may take up more space than usual to communicate dominance. His gestures can become more animated, his expressions more exaggerated. In subtle ways, his body language is broadcasting a message of "look at me, notice me, approve of me." Even if he doesn't realize it, highly attractive women often notice this immediately because it contrasts with the calm, grounded energy that signals genuine confidence. The psychology behind overcompensation is deeply rooted. It's tied to a desire for approval, a fear of rejection, and the human instinct to signal value when faced with a potential mate. When a man senses that the woman he's speaking to is desirable, his brain unconsciously enters a mode where it tries to maximize perceived attractiveness. And here's the catch: the more he focuses on appearing impressive, the more nervous he becomes, creating a loop that escalates overcompensation. Each attempt to impress often leads to another, until the behavior becomes almost comically obvious. You see this pattern in many social settings. A man may talk about his job title, his salary, or the impressive projects he's been part of, trying to convey status. He might reference social circles or acquaintances he believes she respects. Some men even resort to storytelling that frames themselves as adventurous, daring, or dominant, hoping that these traits will signal attractiveness. And while these attempts can be well-intentioned, the subtle cues, slightly forced laughter, a quick glance to see her reaction, and overemphasis on achievements often give away the anxiety underneath. Overcompensation also has an emotional component. The man who feels insecure may oscillate between extremes, sometimes acting overly confident and at other times retreating into awkwardness. His attempts to impress can come across as inconsistent, and these shifts in energy are detectable to the woman he's trying to attract. The key takeaway is that overcompensation is not about deception. It's about managing perception under stress. It's a coping mechanism, a way to try and control an unpredictable social outcome that feels high stakes. Interestingly, this behavior can be flipped on its head once the man recognizes it in himself. Awareness is incredibly powerful. When a man notices that he's exaggerating or overperforming, he can pause, recalibrate, and choose authenticity instead. Authenticity, after all, is far more magnetic than any attempt to impress. A man who is grounded in himself, who doesn't feel compelled to overstate his value, communicates confidence effortlessly. And the truth is, highly attractive women respond more to this authenticity than to any carefully crafted display of status, humor, or accomplishment. Even in casual interactions, overcompensation is evident. You might notice a man suddenly trying to showcase physical prowess, cracking more jokes than normal, or giving more elaborate compliments. Every action is a subtle attempt to impress, to close the perceived gap. And while it can be endearing at first, if unchecked, it often comes across as needy or anxious. What's important to understand is that overcompensation is rarely about the woman. It's about the man's perception of himself and how he believes she perceives him. When we talk about how men act around highly attractive women, words only tell part of the story. Body language is where the truth really shows up. You can hear someone say they're confident, charming, or laid back, but if their body is betraying them, the message comes through loud and clear. Highly attractive women are often experts at reading these subtle cues because they've learned to pick up on signals that reveal a man's true feelings before he even says a word. One of the most noticeable body language signals is posture. A man who is genuinely confident will carry himself with a relaxed, open posture, shoulders back, chest slightly out, head held high, not in arrogance, but in quiet assurance. In contrast, a man who feels nervous or intimidated will often unconsciously shrink himself. He might hunch his shoulders, cross his arms, or angle his body away as if trying to make himself smaller or less noticeable. This posture isn't just a physical reaction, it's a window into the mind. It tells the woman he's uncertain, unsure of himself, or overly concerned about her perception. Eye contact is another critical signal. There's a delicate balance here because too little eye contact can indicate discomfort, shyness, or evasiveness, while too much can feel intense, aggressive, or trying too hard. Men who are nervous around highly attractive women often flick their eyes away frequently, scanning the environment, checking their phone, or glancing around the room for a distraction. On the other hand, a man who is comfortable and confident maintains natural, steady eye contact. He doesn't stare or overfocus, but his gaze communicates presence and attention. Interestingly, micro-expressions, those tiny, involuntary facial movements, can also betray anxiety or attraction. A brief tightening of the lips, a raised eyebrow, or a quick smile that fades too fast can all signal nervousness, even when words are carefully chosen to hide it. Gestures and movements also play a huge role. Nervous men tend to fidget, touch their face, hair, or clothing repeatedly, or shift their weight from foot to foot. These actions are subconscious attempts to release tension, but they are also loud signals that the man is uncomfortable. In contrast, confident men use gestures deliberately and sparingly. Their movements feel purposeful, whether it's a casual hand gesture while speaking or a calm, controlled reach when handing something over. Every small movement communicates a level of comfort with the environment and with the person they're engaging with. Even spatial awareness, how a man occupies physical space, reveals a lot. Men who feel nervous or intimidated often stand too close or too far, misjudging the personal distance that feels natural. Standing too close can indicate an eagerness to dominate or impress, while standing too far can signal hesitancy or fear of rejection. Confident men, however, naturally find a comfortable distance, respecting personal boundaries while also subtly signaling presence and engagement. The way a man leans in or back can also communicate interest or apprehension. A slight lean in conveys engagement, but an overlean can feel intrusive, while leaning back excessively can appear detached or disinterested. Even seemingly minor actions, like the way a man walks or the energy he brings into a room, are part of this body language matrix. Nervous men may move with an urgency or awkwardness that draws attention to their anxiety, quick steps, uneven pacing, or restless shifting. Confident men move with intention, a calm rhythm that conveys self-assurance. The subtleties here are important because women who are highly attractive often pick up on these signals instantly. They don't just notice the words being said, they notice the energy behind them, the congruence or incongruence between words and body. Facial expressions are perhaps the most revealing of all. A man who is nervous will often overcompensate with exaggerated smiles or laugh too loudly, as though trying to convince the other person and himself that he's comfortable. Conversely, subtle, genuine smiles and expressions of interest tend to communicate more than grand gestures ever could. It's not just about the smile itself, but about micro moments, how the eyes crinkle, how the face relaxes, and how expressions shift naturally during conversation. A confident man doesn't feel the need to overexpress because his body is aligned with his inner state. Even the smallest signs, like mirroring, play a role. A man who unconsciously mirrors the woman's movements or gestures is often showing subtle attraction or nervousness. It's an automatic behavior, a reflection of the brain's way of creating connection and rapport. Confident men may mirror deliberately, using it to foster natural harmony, whereas nervous men mirror in an exaggerated or uneven way, revealing internal tension. All of these cues, posture, eye contact, gestures, space, facial expressions, and micro movements combine to create a language that operates below the level of words. Highly attractive women notice this language instinctively, and it often tells them more about a man's intentions, confidence, and authenticity than any verbal communication could. Understanding this body language not only allows you to recognize these patterns, but also gives insight into how interactions could shift if the man were more aware, grounded, and present when it comes to understanding how men act around highly attractive women. One of the most subtle yet impactful dynamics is the tension between strategy and authenticity. This is something that most people don't consciously notice, but it has a profound effect on how interactions unfold. Strategy, in this context, refers to the calculated behaviors, lines, or techniques a man uses to impress or influence. Authenticity, on the other hand, is about being true to who he is, showing his genuine self without embellishment or performance. The interplay between these two elements often determines not just how he is perceived, but how comfortable, magnetic, or relatable he actually appears. Many men believe that a strategic approach is the fastest route to attraction. They craft stories, deploy humor in calculated ways, or even manipulate situations to create the illusion of desirability. And while there is nothing inherently wrong with strategy, after all, everyone wants to put their best foot forward. The problem arises when strategy overtakes authenticity entirely. When a man becomes overly focused on performing a version of himself that he thinks will impress, he stops being genuine. His actions become predictable, mechanical, or slightly off-putting. Highly attractive women are adept at sensing this because authenticity is far easier to detect than most people realize. A confident, grounded person radiates a natural energy that can't be faked, whereas calculated moves often feel like overcompensation. The key challenge is that men often confuse strategy with success. They assume that if they employ the right techniques, they will be more appealing. This might work temporarily or in controlled settings, but it doesn't create deep, meaningful connection. Strategy without authenticity is like trying to build a house on shifting sand. It might stand for a moment, but it's not sustainable. Authenticity, in contrast, communicates trust, comfort, and a sense of ease that is magnetic on a human level. Highly attractive women, in particular, are drawn to this because they can sense the difference between someone who is performing and someone who is fully present in the moment. Interestingly, the most effective form of attraction often lies at the intersection of strategy and authenticity. It's not about abandoning all technique or planning. It's about using strategy to support your authentic self rather than replace it. For example, a man might use humor or playful teasing as a strategic tool, but when it flows naturally from his personality, it enhances connection instead of feeling forced. Similarly, deliberate storytelling about experiences or achievements can be compelling if it's rooted in genuine experience rather than crafted solely to impress. The difference lies in intention. Is he acting for approval, or is he sharing who he truly is? One of the clearest signs that a man has lost authenticity to strategy is when his energy feels disjointed or inconsistent. He might start the interaction confidently, only to overcompensate later when he perceives the woman's interest fluctuating. Or he might suppress natural behaviors because he believes they're not attractive enough, leading to awkwardness or tension. Authenticity, on the other hand, is steady. It doesn't fluctuate based on perceived outcomes or approval because the man's confidence comes from within. His actions align with his true self, making him more predictable in the most appealing way. Another layer to consider is emotional transparency. Strategy often encourages men to hide vulnerability, to present a polished, untouchable persona. Authenticity, however, allows for the subtle display of emotion, the willingness to show curiosity, interest, or even uncertainty in a balanced way. This doesn't mean oversharing or being needy. It means being comfortable enough with oneself to engage honestly. Highly attractive women are often drawn to this because it signals emotional intelligence, maturity, and confidence. The kind that doesn't need to prove itself constantly. It's also important to notice how strategy versus authenticity manifests in micro moments. The way a man responds to a joke, reacts to a casual comment, or handles small setbacks can reveal whether he's performing or being genuine. Strategic behavior often looks rehearsed, smiles at the wrong time, jokes that miss the mark, or exaggerated reactions. Authenticity flows naturally. A man doesn't need to force humor or charm. It emerges organically from his presence. Similarly, the way he listens, truly listens rather than preparing the next line, is a powerful indicator of authenticity. Over time, the tension between strategy and authenticity shapes long-term connection. Men who rely too heavily on strategy without grounding themselves in authenticity often create superficial interactions. They may get short-term attention or interest, but the deeper engagement required for meaningful connection is missing. Those who integrate authenticity with subtle strategic awareness, however, naturally attract interest while remaining true to themselves. They don't feel the need to impress constantly, and their presence communicates confidence, consistency, and reliability. This balance is what makes interactions feel effortless, magnetic, and ultimately sustainable at the end of the day. Understanding how men act around highly attractive women is less about judging behavior and more about recognizing patterns that reveal deeper truths about confidence, insecurity, and authenticity. We've seen how confidence versus nervousness can completely alter the way a man presents himself, how overcompensation often exposes underlying insecurities, and how body language speaks louder than words, showing exactly what a man feels before he even says it. Most importantly, we've explored the delicate balance between strategy and authenticity, how trying too hard to impress can backfire, and how being grounded in your true self creates a magnetic, lasting presence. By paying attention to these dynamics, you're not just observing surface-level actions, you're uncovering the psychology behind them. You begin to see the insecurities, intentions, and genuine qualities that drive behavior. And this understanding is empowering because it allows you to navigate interactions with awareness, to connect more authentically, and to interpret signals with clarity rather than assumption. Attraction isn't about perfection or performance. It's about presence, honesty, and understanding the subtle rhythms of human behavior. The more you recognize these patterns, the more natural and effortless your interactions will become, and the more control you have over creating genuine connection in any situation.